Rarely do you get the chance to talk with someone who has built an entire advertising business from the ground up inside a company that wasn't even known for its advertising. But today I get to do exactly that. My guest is Shane Dwyer, the head of sales for Lyft Ads. Shane was the driving force behind the creation of Lyft's advertising business, from the first product concepts to the scaled commercial organization. Before Lyft, Shane held senior sales and leadership roles at Snap, Yahoo, and Time Inc., helping to shape the digital platforms that connected brands to advertisers. By way of disclosure, I want to make one thing clear. I am currently working with Shane and the team at Lyft, but this session is completely independent of that work, and we won't be discussing that collaboration. Shane, thank you for joining me. I am so glad that we were able to make this happen.
Thanks for having me, James. Happy to be on the Yield Doctors podcast.
Well, I'm very happy to have you. Let's start with the basics. Many people probably don't even know that Lyft has an advertising business. What are the main products that you offer, for example, in app placements, car wraps? What are we talking about?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we launched, I take a step back, right? We launched an ads business at Lyft about 2.5 years ago. I started here actually about 2.5 years ago as well, and coincides with the build out of our digital advertising solutions. Take a step further, back a few years, Lyft had purchased a company called Halo Cars, which built digital toppers on top of yellow cabs in New York City. And that was the foundation behind the build out of Lyft Media. We are now known as Lyft Ads, but we were formerly known as Lyft Media. That business started the strategy behind trying to identify ways to build a monetization and commercialization strategy around our vehicles, our users, our riders, and ultimately trying to tie marketing spend into providing some sort of value for not just the marketers, but also paying the drivers as well. So fast forward to, I guess, April of 2023, I joined the company, and the remit was to identify the first party data sets that we sit on top of and to start to think about how to use those to build a commercialization business behind that. So Lyft in and of itself is a rideshare platform. It's a really interesting ads business that hadn't been an ads business in the past, because of the billions of transactions that we sit on top of. So we know a lot about our riders. We understand where they live, where they work. Are they on a business trip? Are they on a regular trip, a leisure trip? Where are they going? Where have they been? So the identity graphing that we've been able to build out using ride intent and ride behaviors is really interesting first party data that my previous employment at Snap and prior to that at Yahoo and at Time Inc., we had a lot of cookie-based data, but the transactional data and the purchase data that we have at Lyft is very unique and very different. So starting with that, we knew we had a business opportunity. Couple that with the fact that people use the Lyft app for 24 minutes meant we have a hyper attentive consumer, and we know a lot about that consumer. So those two components are kind of like the perfect match when you're trying to build an advertising business. So we launched ads in our app in August of 2023. We fast followed, it was a display product. We fast followed with a video product in November of 2023. And what started as an in-app, in-ride, hyper contextually relevant advertising business, utilizing sight, sound, and motion enabled ad products when you're waiting for your ride, when you're looking for your car, when you're trying to identify the make, model, and trim, and what the license plate is, and what color it is, and when that driver is going to be there to pick me up, has fastly transitioned into not just an in-app business and an in-ride business, but an ads platform that we built in our home screen. So you might have seen some of the really fun and interesting products that we've built within our map. We've started to test and learn with offers. So giving, discounted rides or faster pickups, which have been really exciting. And we also have this massive segment of our drivers. So we have north of 1 million drivers who use the platform to get people to and from places and to make money as they're doing so. We've actually leaned into them and started wrapping vehicles and started doing some really interesting swarm-based events where, you know, we're sending vehicles to sporting events and to concerts in a way that help amplify what they're doing with us in the digital world. So yeah, it's been a fun 2.5 years, and the Lyft Ads business is up and running, and we're having a good time building it.
So thank you. And since I promised we'd talk about the origin story, what did it look like when you walked in day one? Because I think I've talked to some mutual colleagues, and many of us are comfortable taking a business from sort of 10 to 100, but very few take it from 0 to 1. And frankly, I would probably have a high degree of anxiety around how do you even start with no revenue and a dream. So talk to me about starting the business.
Yeah, it's an awesome question. So it's an easy one to tell because I lived it. Now, I think the first thing I did is I told my wife and my kids I'd see them in 3 years. And it's been 2.5 years, so I'm looking forward to spending some time with them. And I guess 6 months from now, the countdown clock is on. No, I mean it's taken a ton of blood, sweat, and tears to get this business from where it was, which is nothing, not having a digital ad product, into where we're at today. I think the first thing that we did is the first thing that I did is put a business plan together. But a business plan is only so good as the dollar takes it. So put a plan together. Very much worked with the team that we had in place, which is a very small SEAL team of a couple product people and a couple engineers who were building the code to launch digital advertising within the walls of the Lyft app. It's funny you ask. Day one, I joined a stand-up meeting that the team had, and I asked the team, "Hey, do you guys have a narrative that I could take a look at?" And the team looked at me and said, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have a narrative. So I said, okay, I'll be back in 24 hours. I shut my door. I wrote a narrative. I presented it to the team 24 hours later. And I said, this is our story. This is what we're going to go to market. This is how we're gonna communicate the offering. And we went out and we started to socialize what we were building, right? We're building the product that's going to, help commercialize destination intent. I think, some of us had worked in search before, some of us had worked in social before, and intent is such a powerful thing. And I think if you can capture destination intent, like where you're going at any given moment, that's such a ripe piece of first party data that marketers were really excited to participate in. But what I'd say is, like, the other thing that we did is we went on this listening tour. So I was able to hire a few people. We went out, we ran across the country, and we talked to our friends and partners and colleagues and people that we've been doing business with and partnering with for over 20 years. And, really just asked them, hey, what do you need us to do in order to build this business? Like, what type of tracking do you need? What type of measurement do you need? What type of MMP integrations do you need? And we'll build it. We've got a couple engineers, and they were in the room too, and we were listening. And I think that was a really defining moment, because we had some serious partners of ours who said, hey, if you onboard an MMP, and we can start to utilize Coachella based tracking, we can test this. And as long as you're set infrastructurally wise within the ways that we plan media or the ways that we measure media, we can test this. We also did a really early partnership, launched a really early partnership with Kantar. So I had worked with them when they were previously Millward Brown at Snapchat, and I called them the first week, and I said, hey, we're going to launch an in-app ad product. We need to be able to measure efficacy of media. We need to be able to show the lifts in brand awareness and sort of mid to upper funnel metrics and purchase intent. And we signed that deal within a couple of weeks. And when we launched, we allowed our partners to utilize third-party measurement to be able to showcase the lift that they were driving. So setting up a few of those partnerships, I think, was really core. I think building the narrative was really, really important. What I will say is there was a ton of challenges. So there were a ton of challenges in that we had a tech team that was incredibly smart and incredibly gifted, who had been working at Lyft for a really long time. And They didn't come from the ad tech space. So that was probably the biggest challenge, in that, we had these amazing engineers who were building rideshare marketplaces and understanding the supply and demand of people getting out of, the game 7 of the World Series. Like that is incredibly difficult, but it is so different from the challenges that we needed to solve for when we were building the ads product here. So I think, we went out, we had a couple ad tech, personalities who learned fast and helped us build some solutions that we were able to bring to market, and they proved effective. And that helped us showcase that we were able to, actually, commercialize and build a revenue stream within the company. And I think most importantly, one of the most interesting things for the business of Lyft is that it's a high margin business. So we were able to show early success within a high margin business, and then go back and really ask for like the right level of resourcing to go out and hire extremely proficient subject matter experts on product marketing, on product management within the engineer and the data science space, because it wasn't until we staffed the tech side of the business that we've really been able to sort of accelerate the growth of the overarching business.
I want to dive into that because I, as you know, work with a number of different, whether you call them retail media or commerce media networks, so sort of where advertising has not been the core business. And I often see this pattern of there are a few people like yourself who have been in the industry for a long time and sort of know all the norms and expectations. And you normally see a couple of other people in key places where there is expertise, and there needs to be. Yeah. And then you have to buttress with people you've pulled over from the core business. So from your perspective, what are those core areas where if you've mentioned a number of different engineering and product marketing type people, what are the core things where you really need that expertise if someone were now starting out to build their own commerce media network from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, you need somebody who can socialize the dream internally, right? Like that is so important, to be able to articulate the vision and the opportunity internally, because as much as building this business is going out into market and working with brands and agencies and advertising partners and tech providers, you also need to get the resourcing and support of the internal team. You need to have the board bought into the vision of the business, right? We're a public company, and if you're putting resources into to build this business out, it needs to pay off. So I would say the first thing that you have to do, or that I should say I did, and that I found successful, was socializing internally at sort of, my level, below me, but like really like getting the buy-in at the C-suite. So they feel really good about the opportunity. And, it's David Risher, our CEO, who is incredibly focused on customer obsession, driving profitable growth. And, this is a customer obsessed business that we've been. Everything that we do is hyper focused on the customer. We test and learn everything before we launch anything to make sure we're not degrading ridership, right? So it's building the business plan and circulating that and socializing that internally in a way that speaks the vernacular of the business. It's very important to have your financial team support, right? Because you need to go and get that resourcing to go and hire and staff. So I'd say first and foremost is getting the buy-in. Secondarily is in our instance was going out and taking 6 months, proving the use case and the application that there's actually like product market fit, and you can accelerate revenue pretty quickly. And then I would say thirdly is like getting your tech built in, because you can have the best sales organization in the world, and we have an incredible sales organization, account management organization, creative strategy and design, ad ops, but at the same time, if you don't have an incredible product visionary and someone who has done it before and who can do it again and can do it quickly, I think it's really hard to scale a business. So yeah, I think it's as much about getting internal buy-in, right, and getting resourcing as it is about like getting the right tech leaders in place. Because if you don't have that, it's going to be really hard to run fast.
How do you think about where, when you're starting a new business like this, you need to follow industry norms, and where you're going to break those norms. And I'll give an example, because I believe you charge, at least for some of your ad products, on a cost per ride basis.
Yeah.
That is a relatively unusual mechanism, but you've made it work. So that would be an example where you've sort of deviated from norms, whereas in other cases, you mentioned Kantar, you partner with them to show an uplift study. How do you think about those trade-offs?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I'll take a step back. There is this movement in commerce media. Commerce media is a category that has accelerated its growth in the last 5+ years, and I think playing into that space, we are building a mobility media category. Like that is what we're doing right now, but that falls into commerce media, and there was an interest in the business, right? So I think that having an interest in the business first and foremost is helpful. Having a great brand name secondarily, right, is like equally as helpful. But then you need to kind of look at like, what is the category doing? Like we're defining a category, we're building our own category, which is why we feel really confident in the way that we price. I love that the yield doctor asked the pricing question, but we feel really confident in the way that we've built our pricing mechanism and model, because it's very different, right? Like we're not a social platform that is pricing on a scroll based ad product or a completed view video product. Like we are a platform that has a captive audience for 24 minutes, which is incredible if you think about the backstory of 30 years ago and brands buying 30-second spots on 30-minute sitcoms for crazy amounts of money. We deliver that level of audience engagement for 24 minutes. People are checking on their app multiple times throughout their ride. So the ability for us to price on a ride actually gives the advertiser the opportunity to deliver frequency within that ride, which I think is really relevant and important. And actually, when we start to look at like the hundreds of studies that we've run, to third-party studies that we've run to measure brand efficacy or impact of advertising, we deliver 2 to 3x Kantar norms in terms of brand awareness lifts and purchase intent lifts. We're partnering with the likes of NCS and Circana to start to measure impact of sales lift, and we're starting to see like amazing amounts of growth and comparative to norms there. So I think the pricing model is unique, but when you start to think about the number of times that people check in on the app, it actually isn't that unique if you back into a CPM model that way, right? But we very much thought about pricing alongside measurement, alongside tracking, alongside narrative, alongside what category and what budgets were we pulling from. And there were areas that we zigged and maybe followed the lead a little bit. And then there were definitely areas that we've kind of zagged and tried to build our own model for the business, because we are a different business than other, ad platforms that exist.
You already touched on it, but I want to go a little bit deeper. How do you think about balancing the rider experience with the advertising experience? Because as you mentioned, and this I think again is a trade-off for so many commerce media networks, they really don't want to sort of kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. How have you approached that, and have you had sort of pushback internally as you've been building the business?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. So everyone's bought in, right, within the walls of Lyft, because everyone's excited about the business model and a new revenue stream. I think anyone would be excited about a nicely margined revenue stream that you add on top of an already existing massive company that's been around for 13 years, right? The rider, we actually say that we have two different customers. So we have the rider as one side, and then we have the driver as another. And the most important part of the broader Lyft ecosystem are the rider and the driver connection. We call this the golden path. So when somebody opens up the app, we need to make sure that the golden path is not interrupted. It's not interrupted by our own marketing messaging. It's not interrupted by an advertiser's messaging. It's not interrupted by any other factor, right? We want to make sure that we are able to connect a rider to a driver in the fastest and most efficient, safest way possible for them to get out to where they're going. That is the definition of rideshare. So when we when we launch products, we go through rigorous testing at a very, sort of small alpha exposure level to make sure that anything that we do doesn't degrade ridership and doesn't impact that golden path. We, as advertising people who sit here, small little advertising unit, Lyft Ads, we love disruption and we love creating fun moments. You've probably seen some of the things that we've done with brands like Sephora or ESPN, where we take over the map and we have these fun logos that are riding around, like Bush's Beans on July 4th, super fun. We need to make sure though that actually doesn't create any sort of rift in terms of the actual usage of the platform to pick up the car, pick up the phone and request a ride and to get from point A to point B. So yeah, there's a lot of testing that goes into it because that's the core, business model that we're building at Lyft as a rideshare platform. But we're actually starting to see some interesting growth and usage rates increase with some of the ad products that we're building. So we're starting to test things like sponsored rides or giving discounts actually from a brand within a ride. And those usage rates are actually really high. And we start to see people coming back and using the platform because of the sort of bespoke nature or native nature of the ad units that we're building out. So we think that that third leg to the customer is rider, it's the driver, and then it's the partner. And if the partner can enhance that rider-driver relationship, then we've built a really interesting solution.
For this next question, it's going to obviously depend on how comfortable you are talking about where you're going. But I think it's fair to say you've built a very successful business that could go in a lot of different directions. And so when you think about where Lyft advertising is going next, could be expanding inventory, new data integrations, new ad formats. Where do you see the business going and what are you most excited about?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So if you dialed into our earnings call earlier today, you would have heard a lot about international expansion. You would have heard about what we're doing with Free Now, which is a rideshare company that we purchased that opens up 9 European countries for us, Western European countries, 180 different cities in Europe. That's super exciting for not just the core rideshare business, but for the advertising opportunities, right, that exist within that expansion. We just purchased another really large TBR Global, which is a private chauffeur business that also expands internationally at a very sort of high HHI. So we're now gaining access to a very different user base than our standard rideshare product.
Hold on, HHI, because I'm not sure I know, so my audience definitely wouldn't know.
Household income.
Okay, thank you.
That's who I was talking to. And that's, it just gives us access to somebody who is taking a black car that waits outside when they're in a meeting and then is waiting for them when they walk out of the meeting, takes them back to the office. So that's a whole new marketplace that, very early on, this just happened. But as we start to think about all of these companies that we've expanding into through acquisition that are opening up new audiences and also new markets internationally, I think the expansion internationally is something that I'm extremely excited about with the Lyft Ads business. I would say number 2 is the expansion of our surfaces within our existing app. So when you start to think about there's a difference between opening the app and looking at your price and searching for a place to go and then comparing that with other rideshare apps, right? There's a lot of people that cross shop. So how can we start to utilize that home screen differently than the in-ride ad products that we've built out? And how can we start to increase the surfaces in a way that allow us to open up sort of new audience sets that we're not targeting today? So I'd say there's going to be I'm excited about a surface expansion throughout our product in a way that is really tastefully done with the rider in mind. I would say also along the lines of rider is thinking about driver, right? What are the solutions that we can allow marketers to offer to our drivers who are out driving for 12 plus hours, who need to go out and, get a coffee, who need to fill up with gas, who need to get an oil change, or, who are going to have to stop and eat some food at some point throughout the day. So to me, that's a really interesting audience set that we haven't even opened up yet that I'm excited to tap into. And I'll say, like, the last one that I'm really bullish on, that we've been talking about for a while, that we just launched at Adweek a few weeks ago, is the launch of programmatic solutioning into the Lyft Ads ecosystem. So what I mean by that is we have 44 million riders on the platform who aren't taking rides every single day. If you think about rideshare, it's not necessarily a daily active user type of platform like maybe social media is, or other, news channels. But people who take rides, let's say every other day or a couple times a week, are extremely interesting for a marketer, from a marketer's perspective, based on where they're traveling or what they're doing or where they just went. So how do we start to access those audiences and allow our marketers to take those audiences and target them programmatically? Now, I mean, programmatically, ideally, like at some point or now, within the confines of the Lyft walls, but also off platform. So when you think about like a Lyft ride being a proxy for retargeting. So I was just in New York and I just landed back in Los Angeles and I stayed at this hotel chain and went to these types of restaurants and these types of events at night. And I get home and I'm on a business trip because my business profile toggle is turned on because I want to earn my rewards, my business travel rewards. That in and of itself is a really interesting opportunity for a marketer to come in and message me on social media when I'm at home that night when I got back from the airport, or on my connected TV when I'm watching, a game later that night. So I'm extremely excited about the opportunity for us to take our audiences and make them portable, and allow, I say this all the time. I say that the transaction is the new cookie, right? If we're in a cookie deprecated-ish world right now, then transactions and our transactions as a location-based transaction, I think is such an interesting opportunity or segment for a marketer to utilize for targeting. And if they can utilize that to target off platform, I think these marketers can start to drive like really, really interesting performance. So I think the off network audience extension piece of what we're building is really exciting for us.
I want to ask you one more question before we come to the end of our time together, and it relates to culture. So it may come across as a little bit squishy, but when you're building a business, you have aggressive targets. You need to sort of attack the business. Exactly. You need to build the business quickly. You've got aggressive targets. There can be a lot of pressure, but I've shared with you and others that the people that I've interacted with on your team and Lyft more broadly are some of the nicest, most welcoming people that I've had the pleasure to work with in my career. And so the question is, how do you create that culture? Is it hiring? Are they attracted to Lyft because of some other dynamic? I really just wanted your take on how you're able to construct a team that is not sort of super aggressive in an environment where you have aggressive goals.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely pride ourselves on the team that we've built, and the team that we've built is obviously, complementary to the culture that exists at Lyft and has been around at Lyft since its beginning. I think that the most important thing that we look at as we've staffed a team is we look for people that are builders, right? So there's a difference between builders and renters, and I've been in this business long enough to have worked with a lot of renters who are very comfortable, and also to have worked with a lot of builders who might not be as comfortable, but who are actually creating impact for the business. And I think that like that culture of creating impact and seeing your impact play out is foundational to the people that we've brought in around us, because this is a startup, right? It is a startup it's a 2.5-year startup within a much bigger business that is extremely important to have people who are builders and who are able to operate in ambiguity. That is like probably like the number one question that we ask when we're bringing people in who can really sort of like grab the task and run with it. But at the same time, I think culture comes from being together. And I think that matters so much. So again, I made a joke of it early on, like not seeing my family. I love my family to death, but I haven't seen them that much because we're creating a culture of like being together. And we have offices in New York. We have offices in San Francisco where we're headquartered. We have a smaller office here in Los Angeles where we staffed up a pretty significant sales organization. And we're doing everything we can to get together and to be together. Cause that's like cornerstone to Lyft, right? Like ride share in and of itself gets people together, and that creates culture. And I really do believe that being together creates culture, and energy vibes off of energy. And, you know, if you start with great energy, you know, at the top and it permeates its way down. I think like you just look at, you know, David Risher and you see his energy and you see how strong that impacts the people around him. I think that definitely levels its way down. But yeah, it's something that's hard to do in a startup with extremely strong and aggressive goals. But I think it's something that if you have the right people around you, that you can create the right energy and that creates the right culture.
Excellent. Shane, thank you so much for taking the time today. What is the best way for people to follow all of the amazing things that you're up to?
I mean, that's a loaded question as well. You know, I would say hit me on LinkedIn, Shane Dwyer. You'll find me and you'll see my pink background, my Lyft pink background. I did. This is, by the way, an original Lyft pink mustache that we have in this conference room here that I think is hilarious and just like embodies the Lyft culture and the Lyft spirit. That is a technology that I don't think got super wet in rain, which is like wild. Yeah, I know it's pretty funny. But yeah, you'll find me on LinkedIn with my Lyft pink background. And I try to share as much as I can about the business there.
Again, thank you so much for everybody who's watching. I am James Deaker. I am the Yield Doctor. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, James.